Great. All right. So yes, I'm super excited to talk to everybody tonight. I'm going to be talking to you about characteristics of the beef on dairy industry in New York as surveyed by myself and Margaret Quasdorf between October 2020 and June 2021. Just a little bit of background on myself. I've been with Cooperative Extension since 2014, and this topic really caught my attention I think in 2017 as it was starting to grow. So Margaret and I teamed up to do this survey, which is near and dear to both of our hearts. Margaret and I both have a background in beef, and so this topic really marries what we do in our full-time job as dairy extension specialists, but also what we like to do in our free time is play with beef cows. So with that, let's get going into the slideshow. So as I said, we started this survey in October of 2020 and completed it in June of 2021. And we had a great response from across New York State. We had 112 responses recorded, and every county you see in red is a farm that we recorded a response from. So we covered a great amount of the state. And we thank, if you were somebody that responded to this, we thank you for your responses because they were full of great information. So the size of the dairies represented by the responses, we asked what size herds are you if you're a dairy farm, and 29% of our respondents were 100 cows or less, 10% were 101 to 200 cows, 19% 200 to 500, 14 500 to 1,000, and our next biggest category was more than 1,000 cows. We did ask what is the predominant breed in your herd, and 79% of farms said they were Holstein, predominantly Holstein. We did have a few Jersey farms and a few other breeds represented, which were crossbreeds, brown Swiss, and a Galloway herd. So nice representation of New York State. I think it's pretty representative of what we see out there. So moving on to some more information. So our big question we asked right off the bat, do you use beef sires on your dairy cows? And overwhelmingly, 80% of our respondents said, yes, we're using beef on dairy cows. 6% said they have, but not currently using in this past 12 months. A little bit less than 2% said it's been more than 12 months since they've used beef. And only a little over 11% said that no, they never have used beef sires on their dairy cows. So because of this, you know, we want to know why always, right? That's always the question we're asking. If no, why not? And so this is a count of responses, right? So we're only looking at a small subset of our big data. So 8 people said they purely just didn't want to use beef on their dairy cows. 4 people said they've been growing the herd. 2 said they didn't have enough information on the topic, and 1 person said it would involve owning another bull or starting using artificial insemination. So, you know, it's a fair representation of why perhaps people might not want to use beef on their lactating cows. But more interestingly, let's talk about why, if they are using beef sires, how are they using them? So overwhelmingly, 80 people said we're using artificial insemination. A handful said live bull, and another handful said both live bull and artificial insemination, which is quite interesting, right? So another good question was, how long have you been using beef sires? And a very small percentage said 7%. Remember, this is between October 2020 and June 2021. So, you know, let's rearrange and think about the time frame we're thinking of here. Less than 12 months, so very new to the game at that point. 27% said 1 to 2 years, 38% said 2 to 3 years. And then we have 16% that was 3 to 5 years, or this 12% of our population saying they've been using beef on their lactating dairy cows for greater than 5 years. So it is no new news to them. They've been using it for a long time, which is super interesting. We then asked, has your usage of beef sires changed? And 21% said no, we're still using it the same as we always have. 70% though said, yes, our usage has absolutely increased. 5% said our usage has decreased of beef sires on our lactating dairy cows. And that 3%, we put it in another category, and that other was it stayed the same. So small percentages, thankfully. But what we can take this, our usage of beef sires, and we'll see later in tonight's talks that our usage has increased, and we've got data to support that in the industry. So looking now at our replacement heifer inventory, we asked what percent of replacement heifers are bred to beef sires. And so we can see 35% of our farmers said none. We're not using beef sires at all in our replacement heifers. Less than 10% said 10% usage, 46% of farms said that. And then we've got a smattering here at the far end of our chart here. But we can take from this that people generally aren't using beef sires in their replacement heifers at the time of the survey. When we contrast this to lactating cows, though, we look at this spread, and this spread is way different than our replacement heifers, right? Our spread from none to only being 2%, where previously it was a lot more, right? It was 35% before. Now it's only 2%. And we're seeing all the way on the other end of the spectrum in the pink there, 7% of our farms are using more than 95% beef sires in their lactating cows. And I think that that is a trend, and we'll see going forward that this is a trend that might be, really taking shape, that people are really thinking about how to use beef sires, and they're really strategically and aggressively using beef sires in their lactating herds. So we then asked, if you're using it, what are the primary ways you determine the percentage of your dairy herd to breed to beef sires? So this is a count of responses. So the biggest count of people saying the primary ways they determine is by their dairy replacement inventory. How many heifers do they have in their pipeline? The next biggest way they determine is their reproductive efficiency. For example, preg rate, conception rate. These are the ways that they are determining what to breed, which animals to beef, or how to determine who to breed beef. Next highest was cull rate, also very important. And then we see this market value of our, at that point, we were calling it dairy X beef, which we now know is incorrect to call it that way, right? We need to make sure we're talking about beef on dairy calves and being very correct on that. At the time of our survey, it's still in there. I need to fix it here as well. Our market value of beef on dairy calves was another big player in why farms are using beef in their dairy herd. And then also down there, we see advice of a farm advisor, the market value of straight dairy calves, and then this other category. That other category I have broken out here on the right, which included pedigree, making decisions on energy corrected milk or a by cow basis. Also was time of year, how many they raise and finish per month, and how many they need to fill inventory for their own meat market, which is very interesting. Also, this farm had a live cover based on who's left over for the cleanup bull, who's half Angus, and then dairy replacement costs. Some herds were purchasing replacements. So very interesting how people are making decisions at this point in time. So then looking specifically at breeding a specific cow to a beef sire, we asked, how do you decide to breed a specific cow to a beef sire? And top of the list was failure to conceive to a dairy sire, which was very interesting to me. Next information was milk production on the cow and PTA or parent average, non-genomic means on the cow, followed by other being their next highest category, which included animal composition, pedigree and cow families, lactation number, age of the cow, status of the cleanup bull, and then health characteristics. Further down the list were genomic testing and thankfully random decision. We put that in there because we've heard people say it's a random decision at that point who was getting bred to beef sires. Hopefully this random decision is going away and we're putting more thoughtful decisions into who is actually getting beef sires put into them. So moving now to the subsequent beef on dairy animal, we asked farms, if you're having these calves born on your farm, at what age are these beef on dairy animals sold? And our respondents said, almost 60% of them, that calves leave the farm at less than a week old. Again, there's this smattering in the middle that some farms are holding on to calves till a different time point, maybe older than a week, but still on milk. wean calves, up to 400 pounds, up to 700 pounds, up to 1,100 pounds. But then here's our next bigger category, that is 1,100 pounds to finished weight. So what we can see from this, from our survey, farms are either selling calves right away, which is the majority of our farms, or they're keeping animals right until finish. And then we see this 1% other, which is freezer trade is what that one person said. So they're either leaving the farm right away or they're staying until finished with a slight little bit in the middle bit. So for those farms that are selling their beef on dairy calves at less than a week old, we asked, where are they getting sold? And at that point, the majority of calves were being sold through a sale barn. There was a small percent, 15 people that said they're selling through private sale. And I think there was like 9 people that said they were pre-contracted with or through a marketing partner or a rolling contract. And then here's our percentage that are raising them further. I think there was like 17 farms that said they're still raising them after a week old. So this, I think, is changing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But at that point in time, that 2020 to 2021, most of these calves were being sold through the sale barn. And I think that's really what was going on, what we saw. So for those calves that were getting sold at less than a week old, we asked people that were selling them, how many did you sell per year for your farm? And then what price did you receive per head or per pound? Report to us, however, made sense for you. So on average, our respondents said on average they were selling 260 head per year with a median response of 100, and our range was 1 animal per year to 2,500 animals per year. So there were some large farms that took our survey. The price that farms received per head on average was 160, median 175 per head, with a range of 25 to 250. Again, pretty big range here, right? And our price per pound also was a fairly large range, 40 cents to $2.05, average of $1.62, median of 175. So if we think back to that point in time, I think these numbers feel like they were real. These are what farms reported, and I think that this was a time where it was new and farms were excited to hop on the bandwagon, and some farms were receiving awesome prices and some farms were receiving that 25 bucks and going, what am I doing? So very interesting responses here. Moving on. So if our farms were selling these beef on dairy animals as finished cattle, we wanted to know, where are you selling them? And our biggest response here, 9 farms said freezer beef or direct market. Next highest was private sale. Of few farms, I think 3 farms said yes, we're selling them through the sale barn, and 1 farmer said we're putting 1 in the freezer each year for ourselves. So there's a little bit contrast here, but the majority of farms are saying freezer beef direct market. We're selling them as finished cattle and selling them ourselves. So for those farms that are selling them directly as finished cattle, what prices are they receiving? Same as our newborn or our calves that are still on milk, less than a week old. We asked the same question. Number of animals sold per year per farm. On average, farms were selling about 20 animals with a median number of 6, ranging from 2 head to 80 head per year. Dollars received per head averaged $12.83, median of $12.50 per head, ranging from $9.50 to $16.50. And if they reported a price per pound, on average, these cattle were bringing $1.38 a pound with a median of $1.43, ranging from 71 cents to $2. So again, quite a range we're seeing here, and I'm sure it depended upon whether it was freezer trade or through the sale barn. So for the sale barns, if farms were selling them through the sale barn, we asked, what discounts are you receiving when you do sell them through a sale barn? And you can see a lot of different responses here. The biggest ones being underweight. So we knew that calves that weighed less weren't bringing as much, and not solid black hair coat, which I think as an industry, we're moving away from discounting from this, but I think at that point in time, it was a very real thing. If you saw these patches of white on an animal, sometimes the buyers weren't sure of what was going on with them, and they weren't giving a full value to those calves, maybe for good reason. Next highest categories were no discounts, or farmers weren't sure if they were receiving any discounts. Heifers were discounted, and if it looked like dairy, a lot of farms said they received a discount. Horns, only 2 people selected horns. Navels not dipped, 4 people said that, and that's something I'm going to hammer on in just a little bit, but there's no reason we should be sending calves to a sale barn with their navels not dipped. And then this other category was 2 farms, so something else. So moving on to, I'm going to hop on my soapbox here. We're going to talk about protocols for wet calves. And so in this survey, we asked, how are you treating your beef on dairy calves when they hit the ground? Are you treating them the same as do you have protocols, and are they the same as the farm's dairy heifer calves? 7% of our respondents said they don't have newborn protocols for beef on dairy calves. I would love that number to be 0. I want everybody to have a good protocol for their newborn calves, no matter what color they come out. 67%, 2/3 of our farms said, yeah, they have protocols and they are exactly the same as their farm's dairy heifer calves. That's awesome. 26% said they do have protocols, but they do differ slightly from the dairy farm's heifer calves. So for that 67%, how are they the same? So farms said they're same in that perhaps they receive colostrum, all navels get dipped. One farm said they get high quality colostrum, they dip navel, they receive vaccines, and they're tagged. And another farm said they get 2 feedings of colostrum. So some really good protocols for these calves to make sure they're getting off to the best start. For the farms that differed but still had protocols, how did they differ? So one farm said they don't give vaccinations or extra supplements. Another farm said they don't give second colostrum. Another farm said they receive a gallon, but it's of lower quality colostrum. Another farm said they supplement lower quality colostrum if higher is not available. And that final farm said colostrum quality and amount aren't the same as their heifer calves, but they're still getting colostrum. So slightly different, maybe not all bad, but they are different from the dairy farm's heifer calves. So for the subset that said we're raising these beef on dairy animals past that week-old stage, we asked them, how are you raising them? Are you raising them alongside your dairy herd in the same pens? And we can see there's a little bit of everything going on here. Our biggest response, 7 farms said, yep, they're raised for part of their lives together with dairy heifers. 5 farms said they're raised in the same pens as dairy heifers for their entire lives. And 4 farms said, nope, we keep them completely separate from my dairy herd. So a little bit of everything we're seeing out there. And I think that's still continuing on today. Another big question we asked, do you track growth rates? And 14 farms said, nope, we're not. Only 3 farms said they are. So for the farms that said no, we said, why not? We asked why not. And that first bullet point gets me, no compensation. I argue to differ. I beg to differ on that one. If we're not managing, we can't manage without growth rates, especially on these calves. If we don't know what it's taking to grow these things, we don't know how efficient, how productive. We don't know anything about how we're growing these guys. So another no, why not answer would be not on all animals. They're not set up for it. They're not set up for catching animals. They don't have the means or equipment, time and labor considerations. They've never considered it. No scale, not easy to do, or they eyeball test. So lots of reasons for no, but I argue the big reason for yes is it will pay you back. So last few slides we're getting into here, I wanted to toss in my ideas for keys for New York beef on dairy industry viability, which I'm sure the rest of the speakers throughout the rest of the program will highlight a lot of these. So I'm just going to touch on them. So it all starts with proper sire selection at the dairy level, right? And I know this this picture in the lower right is going to show up later on in the series, but we want, as beef growers, we want to move away from this dairy type ribeye that's on the left. We want to move more towards a beef type ribeye, wider, not as long, fits on a plate nicer. But to get those, we need to focus on our beef carcass traits. We also need an animal that will grow rapidly and efficiently, right? But our dairy farmers are focused on, and we saw this in our survey, dairy farmers are focused on conception rate and calving ease. We need to make sure we're strategically using these beef sires and focusing also on carcass traits and growth rates, not just using any old beef bull. Secondly, again, up on my soapbox, we have to focus on newborn management. At a minimum, calves need their navels dipped. They have to have adequate colostrum, and we need to really view these calves as valuable co-products to the dairy industry and a huge asset to our beef industry for lots of different reasons. A big one that I hope as an industry we're really working towards is proper nutrition throughout the life stage for these beef and dairy animals. What does this look like? How much milk do these calves need when they're in that milk stage? At what rate of gain is the most efficient for them to grow? Where is the most profitable time for them to be finished? All of these things we aren't really sure of yet. We're getting closer, but we need to make sure we're looking at this. More broadly, we have to think about how do we learn from each other and get networking between farmers and lines of communication really opened to really solve this new fun thing we're working on. We need to figure out infrastructure for processing. There's a lot of farms raising these to freezer beef. We need to figure out how to market these animals or these beef products. And then what does the economics of raising these animals look like? And how do we benchmark growth rates, but also profitability? And so this is my final slide. I wanted to just walk you through some of the trends that I'm seeing currently. What I see out there with the herds that I'm working with, they're breeding a larger percentage of the lactating herd to beef sires. They're really strategically thinking about how many replacement animals do I need, and really pushing the envelope for getting them out of the correct animals. Secondly, more calves are being sold through contract or private sale. Less, I think, are going straight through the sale barn, and they're leaving and going on trucks immediately. They're not going through a sale barn. A lot of these calves may or may not have program tags, whether that be the InFocus tag, Select Sires tag, ST Genetics, anybody else I left off the list. They may or may not have those program tags in their ears. We know beef on dairy newborn calf care is an increasing priority. People that are buying these calves want to make sure that they're going to be healthy and hit the ground running. We also know our premium price of that beef on dairy calf is holding and maybe even strengthening as of late. And the second to last bullet point there, dairy farms are more strategic in selecting beef sires. The Angus Association has developed EPD for breeding to both Holstein and Jersey dams. Slightly different. I have seen a lot of smaller farms using live cover with Angus bulls. Perhaps they're using embryo transfer, really expensive semen and replacement heifers, and then putting in a cleanup bull that's Angus. So they know if it hits the ground as black and white, it's their really special calf. And if it hits the ground as a beef on dairy calf, they know who the sire is. And then we've also seen more embryo transfer of full beef breeds into lactating dairy cows. So that's a new trend that we need to figure out how much is this going on. So these are the questions that I have that I want answered, and my colleague Margaret and I are we are currently in the process of putting another survey together, and we're hoping for that survey to come out later this year, hopefully by the summer. So if you see it out there, please take it. And I love to talk about this subject. So at this point, I welcome any questions, and thank you so much for inviting me to come speak tonight.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Betsy. I've heard this exact presentation before, and I'm just in awe of the amount of data you were able to collect and just how amazingly diverse it is, and some of the little nuances that we wouldn't expect as educators. So thank you, and for your team for putting this together.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We do have a question that came through, and this person asks, on your survey, did you ask producers about the type of beef semen used? And in terms of type of beef semen, that is a premium for carcass traits, calving ease, etc.
Yeah, so great question, and one that we are, we're in the midst also of writing up. There's so much data that I didn't present on, right? Because I could talk for hours on this topic. That is one question in particular that we asked, and our dairy farmers said they're looking at calving ease and conception rate. They didn't care about carcass traits. We asked about ribeye, we asked about marbling. We asked if they knew what EPD was, and I think 2/3 of the respondents said, we don't know what EPD are. We have no idea. We are looking for conception rate and calving. I'm using a consultant or an advisor to tell me who to breed my dairy cows too. I don't know anything about beef sires. So, yeah, they're only looking at two things: calving ease, conception rate.
Gotcha.
That may be different today. Remember, this was mostly in 2021. So, we're 2 years later. So hopefully dairy farmers are getting better information.
Perfect. So we have another question here. Did you report what the average or median proportion of herds are bred to beef versus dairy bulls? And she says, sorry if they missed it. I know you mentioned this in the beginning.
Can you be more specific with what you're asking? I may just be being dense, but I've been looking at this data all day too. So.
That's okay. So I think what this person means is if you have a dairy herd, how many dairy herds in New York State are breeding to beef bulls? How many dairy herds in New York State are breeding to dairy bulls? Dairy, beef, and then the combo.
Yeah, so using beef sires, it was like my very first slide, right? It was, I don't know, it was like 2/3 or 70%. It was something crazy. I should know it off the top of my head, but I don't. We can back up. But Amy, I can chat it to you in a little bit. It's a huge percent. Yeah, of our respondents, I mean, there's over 100 responses, and like the majority of herds were saying, yeah, we're using beef sires. Live covered dairy bulls, we didn't ask about live covered dairy bulls, if that's a question.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that looks like all the questions for right now. If you have a question and you're not comfortable asking it right now, we will turn off the recording at the end of the presentation for you to ask it then. And if something comes up as we go along for Betsy, go ahead and pop it in the Q&A and we can ask it after all of the presentations are over for today. So thank you, Betsy, so much. And we're going to go ahead and welcome Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi. All right. Let me see if I can do this correctly. I'm going to work off 2 screens, so I apologize if I'm looking rather startled or looking back and forth. Anyway,
looks good. It looks good.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me be part of your session tonight. It was great hearing from Betsy, and my camera was off, but I was nodding my head like, yes, I totally understand the facts that she presented, and yeah, that was it was really good to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing from Camila as well. So I'm going to jump into my part of the presentation, and as Amy has said before, questions are welcome and participation is welcome throughout, or you can ask questions at the end. I also could talk about beef on dairy for hours, but this presentation is for you, and I want you to learn the things that you came here to learn. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do spend the majority of my days at work in this beef on dairy arena. So if I can't answer your question or I can't help you, I sure can find out somebody that can do that. So anyway, I'm going to take a brief minute to introduce myself. I'm Karen Wheatley. I was born and raised on a registered Holstein farm in Maryland. And in fact, that's where my husband and I live today. We both have full-time jobs, but farming is our ever-present side gig, if you can call it that. I think there's a lot more hours in this side gig than most, but we love it, just like many of you do. We farm about 265 acres. We have some sheep for meat production, and of course, we have a growing cattle herd. We use that cow herd to not only replenish itself, but to breed show steers and show calves for some local 4-H kids that love to spend their summers exhibiting them. And then also, like a lot of you, we have a freezer beef business. So as I mentioned, I grew up with dairy cattle and did all the things. I did the showing and judging and dairy bowl and clipping, and it was the best way to grow up. I mean, I've worked in genetics on the dairy and beef industry side for 20 plus years. I also took some time off in between those 20 years to work as a magazine editor for Holstein World. So I've seen a lot of trends in the dairy industry, and nothing is as exciting to me as what we're seeing right now in the beef on dairy sector. And it is truly exciting. So I've been part of the Select Sires family for about 10 years, and I think it's important to mention them. Obviously, they're my employer, and I'm very grateful for that, but they, along with a few competitors of ours, have invested a great deal of time and money and research into this beef on dairy realm. And I truly feel like that's something to be celebrated. None of us, Select Sires or any of the others, have continued to keep our heads in the sand and make just common beef on dairy calves. And that speaks volumes about the long-term success for all of our customers. Of course, I'm going to say the Select Sires plans are the best, but that's beside the point. I originally started with Select on the West Coast, and I worked in California and Washington for all West Select Sires, and eventually moved home to Maryland to join the Premier team. So for those of you that don't know, Select Sires is a farmer-owned cooperative owned and directed by the 6 federated members that are shown on the slide. Each of those members in turn are owned and directed by their own farmers and ranchers. So ultimately, if you're listening from New York and you're a cooperative member of Premier, you're an owner of Select Sires. So I think that's pretty cool. Premier represents 23 states and employs over 180 people. You can see we actually have the best of both worlds, I think. We have some of the leading dairy states in our territory: New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia. But we also have some of the leading beef production states in Kansas, Virginia, and Tennessee. So what happened in the past to even create a need for beef on dairy crosses? It really began with the advent of sex semen in 1989, which totally rocked the dairy industry. Producers now had a 90% chance of producing females with every unit of sex semen that was used. That was great. You know, we could now capitalize on the best genetics and the best cow families and make more of those profitable females. This would result in an overall improvement of the quality and productivity of the national milking herd. But it also adds to the total number of dairy cows in the US. And did we actually need that many? Also, at the same time, Select Sires was working on improving the fertility of their semen, which has resulted in an industry-leading fertility advantage. And better fertility means cows are not open as long, and you're going to get calves quicker. So with a dramatic adoption of sex semen usage that continues to increase and improve fertility, the heifer market was overwhelmed. And we had more females than we knew what to do with, and even more females. So as dairy producers do, they set about to fix the problem by leaning on AI companies and other genetic analysis companies like Zoetis, for instance. Producers started sorting their herds into quartiles. And this was just purely a management thing, but these quartiles ranked the herds from top to bottom. So the top quartiles could be sorted by cattle that excelled in production, or profitability indexes like net merit or TPI or DWP. These were the valuable dairy animals, and we needed to make more just like them. Dairy herds also sorted cows into the bottom quartile. These are the ones that contain the cows that were not meant to reproduce. We didn't need their genetics. They were hard to breed. They had health challenges. They were low on production, you name it. These groups were bred to beef so they could have a terminal calf. So the first and simplest solution was to use the beef semen that we all carried in our tanks. Most sales reps and technicians carried some beef for all of these cows, the ones that were hard to breed or we just didn't want a calf from anymore. These were the bottom quartile cows. And these were the cows that, you know, they didn't make much milk. It didn't really matter what semen was used, so long as they produced a black-hided calf. Because, like Betsy alluded to earlier, the marketplace still to this day a little bit rewards cattle with black hides because they are perceived to be better quality. Now, in early days, maybe they were, I think, and I applaud some of the breed organizations that are just ramping up their efforts to make quality beef that can be equal to Angus standards, but kudos to Angus for doing such a great job on marketing. At any rate, any black bull was used, and as you can imagine, the results were all over the board. We saw calves that were tall and leggy, calves that were short and stout. We saw all colors, all shapes, and the bottom line was that the packers, those receiving the finished beef, were not impressed, and they made sure to let us know. So here's the slide, Betsy. From a packer point of view, their main game is consistency. They want to know when these loads of cattle that are coming in from the Midwest or the West, are they getting the same size and the same marbling, the same grading quality in every animal? Kudos to the beef industry because they're making cattle that are very much finishing on the same ratio. Those ribeyes are the same size, and kudos to the feedlot managers for getting them that way. This was not the case with many of the beef on dairy crosses. So at this point in the game, somewhere around 2019, everyone was wondering, is this trend for real? Like, is it gonna stick? Because if it is, we need to rethink cleaning out the tank with any old Angus bull, and we need to start selecting bulls that we do just like we do with dairy, like corrective mating. So what were some of the early considerations and facts that we knew? So Drover's Magazine listed some advantages. Compared to purebred dairy calves, beef on dairy calves can provide higher quality beef products without impacting current milk production efficiencies, because we really want that dairy cow to not miss a beat. We want her to have that calf, and we want her to get right back into the milking string. Beef on dairy calves show greater feed efficiency, which lowers environmental footprint and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Those are buzz phrases for sure. Meat quality improves. The beef on dairy delivers increased volumes of higher grading beef carcasses, providing feed yard operators more access to value-based marketing opportunities. And the dairy influenced meat is pretty high in tenderness. So are there any downsides? Well, compared to native beef calves, beef on dairy calves might take longer to finish. They could be on they are on more days on feed, and that's costly, but that's also breed dependent, as we'll talk about later. Beef on dairy calves have a much higher incidence of liver abscesses, which causes a major disruption in plant efficiency. When they have to stop that line from cranking out carcasses continually just to clean up a liver abscess, it is a big headache for all of them. Compared to native beef calves, beef on dairy calves have a much broader measure of ribeye size and shape, which we've talked about, and that can be a downfall for packers looking to fill boxes with consistent cuts. So what should we focus on then? So we've heard this before, and I know we'll hear it again. Conception rate and calving ease are big for dairy producers, but we also need to look at breed. We need to look at marbling. And if we're using Angus, we can rely on some of their dollar indexes. So what's Premier's role in the beef on dairy world? Well, like our competitors, our role is simply to help all of our customers get the most profitable calves that they can. Most customers, dairy customers, as Betsy alluded to, they don't want to finish cattle, and that's either because they have no space to do so, because they have no time or extra labor to do so. Maybe they have no interest in it, or no additional feed to finish those cattle out. I would say the majority of people we work with need those calves to be born. They need to get up and get going, and they need to hit the road within a week. And that's absolutely fine. That's why we've partnered with some industry associates to provide avenues that would fit these customer needs. So currently we work with programs like 44 Farms, Superior Wagyu, TD Beef, HerdFlex, and Power Genetics. They each have specific breed and bull requirements, as well as calf care protocols in place, making sure that the product that they're delivering to their end user is exactly what it's supposed to be. So for instance, 44 Farms Prime Pursuits. They are based in Texas. They supply Walmart stores from coast to coast with all of their beef. So the genetics used in their program will produce calves that excel in feedlot performance, growth, muscle shape, and marbling. And they've told us this before, it has to be consistent because that beef has to fit on that meat tray. If it's hanging off the side, it gets wrapped sloppy. Consumer doesn't really want that. So they have to have consistency. We have some customers participating in Power Genetics, and they are using Sim Angus bulls instead of Angus that excel in growth, residual average daily gain, marbling, and ribeye. I mentioned Superior Wagyu. That program deals with Jersey cows only, not Holsteins. And they're just mated to specific Wagyu bulls. So all of these programs fall under a profit source program, which enables customers to utilize the correct beef genetics, the calf care guidelines, and traceability measures to ensure demand and marketplace premiums. So depending on the program, calves are tagged with a specific ear tag, and that ensures that buyers are getting the exact program their calves were bred for. So how are we doing with these program calves? Pretty good. We're pretty excited about them. So our profit source Angus Holstein calves average 46 pounds heavier than unknowns. And in this case, unknowns is the tank cleaning bulls, just the any old Angus bull will do kind of mating that I talked about before. So we've got heavier carcasses. 93% of our profit source Angus Holstein calves in one of our trials scored choice or prime. So they're getting those quality grades versus 85% in unknowns. And speaking of our Simmentals, our profit source Sim Angus calves out of Holsteins excelled in ribeye and marbling, 14.61 and 507 versus 14.32 and 496. And in another trial at High Plains Feed Yards in Kansas, considering the current market for a typical grid, and grid is a whole nother webinar we should have sometime, program calves would bring about $190 to $210 more than competitor cattle. So that's why we're involved. We just want to deliver the maximum value through some of these programs. I just wanted to touch base a little bit also on some other research that's been done in this whole realm, and that's been done by Premier and our friends at Penn State, Dr. Tara Felix and her graduate student, Bailey Bazile. In this multi-year study, Premier provided the semen and helped line up several herds in central Pennsylvania, dairy herds. So once those calves were mated and they got on the ground, the team from Penn State took over and they followed through with vaccination protocols, with banding, implanting, weighing, feeding, finishing, and they were all male calves that we worked with for the first 3 years. As a side note, that was done on purpose because as industry standard goes, steers finish faster and more efficiently than heifer calves, so they are preferred, which is why you see some of those price differentials in the baby calf pickup. So approximately 900 units of semen were used in this most recent year of trial work with some pretty solid results. Of course, this is a university trial, so it takes a very short snapshot in time versus a rather continuous production system. But the trends that we've seen for those 3 years that we've done it so far match very closely with what we're seeing in the industry. So for the first 3 years, the Penn State trials were based solely on breed performance. Beef crosses compared with each other, and I think the first year even we threw in some pure Holstein steers to compare. They didn't do very well. But in 2022, we just wanted to finalize, did Angus crosses really have the advantage? And the short answer is yes. Angus Holstein cross calves were the clear performance leaders. They were the heaviest at feedlot entry. They were fed for the fewest number of days, the highest average on daily gain, largest on ribeye area, best on marbling, and on quality grade. So your ability as a producer to make money with your beef on dairy calves is very favorable with an Angus Holstein cross. So that's not to say that the other breeds don't have merit in this arena. Charolais on Holstein crosses are still thought by many to be the magic cross, but they finished behind Angus for weight at feedlot entry, final weight, and days on feed. In addition, the Shar crosses, their dressing percentage was the lowest of the breeds in this trial. So dressing percentage is normally 63%, and that number comes from dividing hot carcass weight by the live weight. And it pretty much answers the question, how much meat can I expect from a beef carcass? So while none of the steers in this study lived up to the industry average of 63%, the Charolais crosses were the lowest in terms of dressing percentages. Ultimately, each carcass had more waste, which given the skeletal size of Charolais animals alone, that kind of makes sense. Having the highest dressing percentage of the group was the Sim Angus Holstein crosses. Sim Angus bulls take the best of Angus growth and meat quality and pair it with the taller, more massive Simmental cattle. Sim Angus bulls are extremely popular because of their fertility, calving ease, and disposition. An interesting side note, Sim cattle have more hair than Angus do, so you'll likely see Simmental or Sim Angus influence in many of the show steers being exhibited each summer. Hair is king, not only for show animals, but for baby calves as well. And then the breed with the most disappointing data, and also in line with what many in the industry believe is a not profitable cross, is the Wagyu Holstein cross. They were the lightest at feedlot entry. They had the lowest average daily gain, and they had the greatest economic loss by breed in the trial. They finished slow, guys. They finished really slow. So many talk about their quality of meat, which is undeniable. I mean, that's a fact. And that's a good thing for the consumers. However, if you're a serious cattle producer and you need to make pounds of meat as quickly and as efficiently as possible, this is not the cross for you. If you remember, though, I did mention Superior Wagyu earlier as a program, and that is the great cross of Wagyu on jerseys. Jerseys provide a quicker finish for this meat and therefore a more viable option for producers. So do you need to own a large dairy to benefit from making program type calves? No, not at all. Semen from these bulls is readily available to all. And I'm sure I speak for our competitors as well. Some of you may be making calves to send to the auction barn at a week old. Some may be keeping cattle to finish at home and sell for freezer beef. The good news is we've got tools to help you pick the right bulls. So we always start by asking questions. And if you currently don't own cattle, just kind of think of a scenario in your head of how you would answer this. But so the first one is, what EPDs do you want to focus on? So we talked about EPDs earlier and Betsy mentioned them, but do you want to focus just on EPDs? Are you selling calves at a week of age? If so, you probably want to focus on birth weight and calving ease. Birth weight to be low and calving ease to be high. And you want to pick a bull that is fairly strong on yearling weight. Those calves are made to grow. Am I keeping calves for my own freezer beef business? Maybe I want to concentrate on marbling and ribeye then to create the best looking and best tasting cut of meat. Do I really not have time to worry about any of this? Do I need an index or somebody to tell me what to use? The Dollar Angus Holstein Index, excuse me, was developed by the American Angus Association. They also did a Dollar Angus Jersey Index, specifically developed to help dairy producers pick through the best Angus bulls to use. So what goes into that index? First thing is calving ease. We've talked about it a few times tonight, and it does make a difference to dairy producers simply because with higher calving difficulty comes reduced milk production and economic health losses. We don't want the fact that she's giving birth to a beef calf to interrupt her true mission in life as she enters the milking herd. So next is feeding and grading. That also goes into the formula. The growth curve of a dairy cross steer is different to a straight Angus steer, with the dairy influence slowing growth and feed conversion just a bit. They are taking that into account in this index. Then muscling is factored in, as there's a pretty substantial difference in native beef versus beef cross animals in terms of muscling. because we're producing meat for plate appeal, we need to make size and shape consistent with what the consumers expect. And I think you're going to learn a little bit more about that tomorrow night in Sam's presentation. Height is another factor in the Dollar Angus Holstein cross, because again, taller, longer, dairy influenced steers are not going to run as smoothly through a plant floor. Any slowdown on the line just creates a boatload of problems. So this Dollar Angus Holstein index is used specifically for cross calves. You'll see a Dollar B index up there, which is used by many of the beef producers. And it doesn't account for calving ease, muscling, or height, as those problems really haven't been as much of an issue. Finally, the last question that we try to ask when we're figuring out what bulls are best suited to somebody is a two-part question. So number one, do I have a preference of what beef bulls I use in terms of breed? And number two, does it make a difference in gestation length? So we talked about the breed differences a little bit from our Penn State trial experiences. Gestation length, purebred Holsteins have the shortest, 279 days on average. Next up in line is the Angus and Wagyu breeds, and they are 283 days, followed by Simmental, 289. Charolais is 290, and then Limousin, which is a beef breed that we did not mention tonight, just not exactly a profitable cross, but they are one of the longest for gestation, 291 days. So as we talked about earlier, there are definitely differences by breed in terms of performance, and studies like the one at Penn State will not be the last one in that arena. There'll be more for sure. As far as gestation length, this can be a pivotal point for people wanting to get calves on the ground early and get them growing right away. Every day that that calf stays in the uterus is one less day of growth. So it's estimated that there are over 3 million beef on dairy calves in the US today. 3 million. No wonder we're excited about it. With the national beef herd taking a hard hit last summer with the drought and wildfires, it was vital to have these beef on dairy crosses in the marketplace to continue supplying the best dietary protein available. So as you can tell, there's no sign of change anytime soon, as these NAAB numbers listed beef semen sales for 2021 and 2022 at record levels. So as we continue to move forward, we're going to see more beef supply chain programs being formed, more fine-tuning of genetics being used, and of course, more research into breed and trait specifics. It's truly an exciting time, and our entire Premier team is available for your help. So with that, I'm gonna end there. We've touched briefly on some of the actual traits, but we're gonna go through a quick exercise as soon as we see if there's any questions.
All right, thanks so much, Karen. Any questions for Karen? We'll give a little bit of time for you guys to get information typed into the chat box there. And I think the activity that Karen's got planned is really exciting. And Karen, I'm gonna say just what you said. If you guys want to stay on for the 5 minutes of this activity and participate and test your knowledge, awesome, do it, please. If you need to take a bio break, or you need a snack, or you need a drink for those 5 minutes, go ahead and go get that. But we will be back here in about 5 minutes or so to go into Camila's presentation about calf care.
Mm-hmm.
So Karen, I don't see any questions popping into the Q&A right now, so we can go ahead with the activity if that sounds good to you.
Sure. So yeah, I just wanted to share a copy of this chart, and this is something that I get every month, and it shows the beef on dairy availability for Premier, and it just talks about the programs that each bull, you can see here, each bull is qualified for. So it's just a cross section. I've got Angus on this side, Simmental bulls on this side. I just use these 2 pages for demonstration purposes, but we're going to take 2 different scenarios and kind of talk about them. So I guess you can put your answers in the chat, and maybe Amy, you can read them.
Karen, we have somebody who raised their hand.
Okay.
Let's see if I can unmute them. I might be able to. so they can go ahead and ask their question. Okay, Fernando, you have, I think you can talk now.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so when you buy bulls, I know the Angus, they always come with, like this company 7AN. So when you talk, in the past, they usually called Simmental, and now it's been called Sim Angus. So how I recognize in the book which is going to be Sim Angus or Simmental?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm not sure if everyone heard or not, but Fernando wanted to know about the difference in identifying Simmental bulls versus Sim Angus bulls in our catalog. And I can only answer for Select. I can't answer for everyone else, but we have, and I'll try to show it. I don't know if it's going to do a good job. So if you see here at the bottom, on Gold Strike, it says he's 3/4 Simmental and 1/4 Angus. It's over here on this part of his EPD. So for all of our bulls in the catalog, in the Simmental section, it will tell you what percentage Simmental they are. Hopefully that answers your question. It won't
okay.
it won't tell you on the code number, unfortunately, but it'll tell you in the catalog.
Be cool if they say SEM 7 SMA and then the number, right?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
Okay.
All right.
So we're good. So they're going to type in the chat answers to you. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. And I will go ahead and read them.
Okay. And I have made some tricky things. So, so see if there's something in there that we talked about already. So you work at Fiery Blazes Holsteins, where the cattle have been trained to be on high alert most of the time. While they're fine being milked, you really don't want to reproduce these cattle that can be a little bananas. So is beef on dairy an option for you? And if so, what breed would you think about using?
Okay. So go ahead and pop your answer into the chat box.
Are you getting any answers?
Not yet.
Oh, you guys.
Oh, I see something in the Q&A. Somebody says Angus. Okay. So if chat's not working for you guys, sometimes it glitches out when we're on webinars. You can go ahead and pop it in the Q&A. That's absolutely fine.
So I know in interest of time, we will keep going, but one of the benefits of using Sim Angus bulls was for their docility. And so I would, if I was going to do beef on dairy in this Fiery Blazes Holsteins herd, I would definitely be using the Sim Angus bulls. So, or Simmental, just docility wise. Okay, I've got another one. Maybe you guys can. We're gonna try with this one. Again, it's got a key word in it. You are the herd manager at Johnny on the Spot Holsteins, and your boss has asked you to breed a small group of your milk cows to beef bulls so he can start up a freezer beef business. Your Holstein herd is known throughout Cattaraugus County as a great show herd. Cows are big and very dairy. What bulls would you use and why?
I love that. Big and very dairy.
Yes. What bulls would you use and why? And if we don't, I mean, it is hard when you have this kind of setup to get immediate response, but so if that was what somebody was telling you, I would focus in on the fact that he said, hey, my cows are big and they show and they're very dairy. And so I'm immediately going to say, okay, if I want to choose a beef bull, I'm not going to have to worry about calving knees. These cows are big. We're going to use Angus. We really don't have to worry about calving knees. So on this chart that I have here, the calving knees and birth weight, I can kind of put them aside. he also said he's going to start up a freezer beef business for local customers. So if you are a person that is sending your calves at a week old to the auction, you're using, and I'm just going to use our bulls as an example, but you're using these bulls to produce beef on dairy calves. These bulls have been selected as the best of the best. If you're selling them at a week old, you're not going to really be focused on the marbling and ribeye because that's going to be someone else's problem. You're using good bulls anyway, so it's not like you're going to use terrible bulls, but that's not something you're going to focus on. If I'm going to start a freezer beef business, you can bet or believe I'm going to be looking at marbling and ribeye. And so each bull is rated, and then below them is their percent rank in the breed. So that tells you that, oh, hey, for sure is in the top 3% of the breed for marbling. He might be a good one. And he's also top 10% for ribeye. That's kind of a cool combination. Other bulls like that. Well, Locomotion is in the top 10% for both. That's cool. Oh, Salina is in the top 1% for both. I think that's my winner. So even if you don't know what the scores should be on marbling and ribeye, because EPDs are big. If you're a dairy person, you're used to reading bull proofs. It's the same thing, only at just a whole nother set of numbers. But the nice thing about beef EPDs is they give you a percent rank. So you can see pretty quickly how that bull measures up. Again, if you're totally just over your head and don't have time to worry about any of this, this dollar Angus Holstein column is going to be your best bet. And check it out. We also have fertility on here. It's a star system. And then we have if these bulls qualify for program calves. So anyway, that's my presentation. I really enjoyed spending time with you guys. I'm sorry about the sun coming through.
It's all right. It's all right. Sun is good.
Sun is
We live
good.
in 7 months of winter. So.
That's right.
All right. So I see something that popped here into the chat. Will the webinar be recorded? I missed a bit of the beginning of the presentation due to internet problems. The answer is yes, it is currently being recorded. You will receive the recording of the presentation uploaded to YouTube, where you can go ahead and play back that recording. We hope to get it to you in the next couple of days or so, but by the beginning of next week at the latest. Okay. And with that, we'll go ahead and pop over to Camila.
Did I share my screen? Can everyone see? Can you see
It looks
mine?
good. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So hi everyone again, since my camera was off in the beginning of the webinar. I'm the last presentation. It's gonna be short, so hang in there. And this presentation, we will talk a little bit on setting up the beef dairy calves for success as beef animals. And as both Betsy and Karen talked during their presentations, genetics is a very important component of the whole beef and dairy business. We have been making amazing progress on trying to correct these genetics and getting some uniform animals. And as we are progressing on the beef on dairy, getting to the whole supply chain, and we are getting some feedback from the feedlots and everything, we are also seeing that we are getting some feedback on the health of these animals. So there are like a lot of talk about how some animals on the feedlots have a higher chance of having respiratory issues, or how some of the animals have liver abscess at slaughter. And so everyone is very, not concerned, but very interested in understanding how we can set up these animals in the beginning of their lives so they can have a lifetime of like health. And on that same note, I just wanted to highlight that what Betsy said on her presentation, that 58% of the calves that are born in the dairy farms are sold less than a week old. And I recently watched the USDA presentation that showed this data of like where these calves are going. And we are seeing that like 1/3 of all the calves that are sold, they're usually sold more than once, because a lot of people sell their calves through barn auctions. And after getting bought on these barn auctions, they also have to go sometimes far out of the state to their final home, or at least for a while. So these calves need to be set up and healthy and in a good condition to be able to go through all this transport. And I just wanted to touch here that in addition for it to being economical concern, we all want our buyers to be happy to keep buying our crossbred animals so we can, get this add value from the animals that we are not using in our replacement program. This is also a welfare concern, right? Consumers are more and more interested in what they are eating and where these animals are coming from. And the fact that we are not using wholesale and we have this opportunity to reduce a little bit of the veal industry and have more animals living longer, which is something that consumers want. They also want them to be treated fairly and be healthy throughout their life. So just like a thing for like thinking, as Betsy showed on her data, and I'm just showing this data really quickly to point out the importance of the protocols we're going to talk here. Betsy said that 26% of the farms reported that they don't use the same protocol as their heifers, and 7% of farms said they didn't have a protocol at all. So we have the majority of farms doing a good job at treating these calves as the same as they treat their heifers, but we still have room for improvement, at least from that previous data and other data in Wisconsin and other people that have reported similar data. So male and crossbred calves are more likely to receive contaminated colostrum, low quality, lower volume, do not receive a second feeding. So they may have this most important thing that can happen with them in the first week of life not being done properly, which can set them back for the rest of their lives. So keep that in mind. So how do we set up beef dairy calves for success as beef animals? I saw in the survey that some of you filled before coming here today that you guys wanted to know more about protocols and how treating beef and dairy crossbred animals would be different than treating the dairy animals. And the short answer I have is there's a lot of research being done, but we have been doing a great job so far in improving the quality and the care with our heifers that are staying on the farm. And so if we keep the same high standard we have for our heifers right now and extend this to our beef crosses, I'm sure we are going to already be doing an excellent job. And as we gather more knowledge on this beef crosses, we may tweak some things, but I'm sure that by doing that, we are going to be doing a great job with these animals. So healthy calves start with healthy cows, of course. And on dairy farms, we do a great job. We have improved a lot of transition cow management, and the nutrition of the cow, the comfort of the cow will really determine how this cow will how this cow answer postpartum, because on the last weeks before she calve is where we do have all these immunoglobulins and colostrogenesis, and the fetal growth is at its height. So if the cow is receiving enough protein, enough fat to support herself and her calf and the colostrogenesis, she will be likely to have a good quality colostrum that will be good for the calf to set up him for success. So a vaccination program that we already do on farm, a basic vaccination program, is important because all these challenges that the cow faced during her life, in addition to like all the vaccines that she get, will determine how rich in different immunoglobulins, in different immunoglobulins these calves will be protected against once they receive the colostrum. So setting up, talking to your vet and setting up a very good vaccination program will be likely the best way to make sure the colostrum has a great quality, a great variety of different protection for the calf, and that this calf will be set up for success. So I'm just going to touch base on a thing that I thought was very interesting by reading the survey from Wisconsin. 67% of farmers did not vaccinate calves that were leaving the farms by 2 weeks of age. And if you are keeping the calves on your farm, it's easier for you to see the value of vaccinating these calves. But if this calf is going before these 2 weeks, you either don't know where this calf is going, or you don't see the value of adding one more cost to this calf. So this is something that would be, of course, a very case by case specific. But as we are seeing more and more people going out of trying to sell their calves on a calf or on the sales barn and doing contracts and private contracts, we are seeing more and more people having these protocols in place of calf care that matches the needs for the person that is buying the calf as well. And so in that case, you might want to talk to your vet and talk to the person who's buying these calves and see which type of protocol would be the best for both of you and how you could be compensated for that. So I just wanted to throw this out there because I've seen people more and more talking about this type of strategy. And of course, a maternity pen that is clean and disinfected, well-bedded, ventilated. We know that when the calf born, he came from inert environment, and while he is laying down, he can be contaminated. So it's good for us to take these calves as soon as possible, because once they start to stand up, so once they are hit the ground, 30 minutes later, they might start to try to nurse, they try to start leaking everything. And if they get the bacteria before they get the colostrum in, it's a race between the bacteria and the colostrum, the calf might lose. So if you can take the cross animals also before they can stand and try to nurse, that will help them continue to be healthy and not get any bacteria in their guts. And also, if you know this cow that just had the calf is sick, if you know she's a non-mastitis cow, this is not something you want to give to your calf. And I know a lot of people have shortage of colostrum. We've heard that some farms that have shortage of colostrum during like winter time. If that's your case, and you can either start a colostrum bank or use some supplement to try to get all the calves, including the black calves, the best colostrum you can, that would be the best option. And we heard Betsy saying during her presentation that some calves on the calf sales barn didn't have their navel deep. And as she said, there is no reason why we should be doing that. That's an easy test to do. It's part of the protocol of the dairy farm, and it's gonna help the calf a lot. So dip the navel in solution of iodine 7%, or if you don't have access to iodine, I know fluoxetine 2% is also an alternative for that. And the interesting data here is that over 26% of the calves that arrive at slaughter establishments, and this data is from view calves, had navel infections. So we are talking about 1/4 of the calves that could, be prevented from having these infections. So the most we can help them with that. We know that the navel is an open space, open wound that bacteria can get in. So if we can dip the navel and make sure these navels are dry and disinfected by dipping the whole cord, and if we can avoid using a dirty solution, because the dirty solution can be inactivated, so using a no return cup can help with that. And I also sometimes, especially if calves are born in a situation that is not ideal, maybe the maternity was not clean or disinfected, maybe the person didn't see the calf, the cow calving, so the calf was born in a different pen. If you know this calf is in a more challenged situation, you can always re-dip the navel the same day when providing the second feeding. So one thing that sometimes I know happen, the truck is coming to get all the calves. You had a calf that just born, and it's tempting to send him with the other calves, but it's a very good practice to just wait and transport calves until they're fed and dry and can stand properly. So avoid shipping and sending to auction barns calves that were just born or didn't really receive any support yet. And of course, as we do with our dairy heifers, if the temperature is low, try to provide some external heat source. We know that calves don't thermoregulate as well as adult animals, and so they need all the help they can get. And after taking this calf from the calving pen, move the calf to a clean, warm, dry, and heavily bedded calf, and identify this calf. Even the ones that are going to the sales barn should be identified so people know their genetics, who is in all of that. So that's something that I've been thinking a lot on, how this life of these beef and dairy animals are so long and they have a lot of transport and they go a lot of places. But I was reflecting on that and I realized that the first 24 hours of the beef and dairy calf is still the most important time for them. So although these calves don't stay too long on the dairy farm, most of them are shipped before the 1 week of age. They still spend one of the most important moments of their life in the dairy farm. So it's our responsibility to make sure they get all the good care they can get so they can succeed in their life. So one number that I saw also in this presentation from the USDA is that we are seeing failed transfer of passive immunity occurring in at least 25% of surplus dairy calves, which based on the last data on heifers, we are seeing that this is like double of the national heifer numbers, which means we are definitely giving a better treatment to these heifers than this crossbred. And if we just do the same treatment from one and another, we are already gonna cut this failure to half, which is gonna be great. So let's just talk a little bit about how we can do that. So the colostrum management is basically 3 very important steps, which would be how quick we can get this colostrum to the calves. So as we are seeing here on this graph on your right, we are seeing the percentage of maximum of IgG absorption, and in the other X, we are seeing hours after birth. And what we can see is that as the animal, after the animal born, the first 24 hours is a race, and each minute that passes, the ability of this calf absorb immunoglobulin reduce, because of course the gut is supposed to be a closed thing so no bacteria can get to the bloodstream. But once the calf is born, they need the colostrum and the immunoglobulins and the immune system to absorb these cells. So the gut is open to receive that. And as these 24 hours pass, this is going to close until after 24 hours, we don't see almost no absorption. So the fast we can get this colostrum in the calves, the best. So the ideal is to try to get this colostrum in within 3 hours that the calf was born. Sometimes this is harder to achieve when the calf is born during the night, but we have to try to do our best to get it in as soon as possible. And the quantity matters. We saw that not most, but some of the people that have beef and dairy on their farms cut the volume of colostrum for the beef and dairy on half and just administer 2 gallons. And we know that these calves will also need this 1 gallon or 10% of their body weight. So do not skimp on beef and dairy calves. They will need this support. And a second feeding of colostrum, 2 or 4 parts of colostrum 6 to 12 hours later would also be very helpful to these animals, because since we not always know the quality of the colostrum we are administering in the first feed, making sure we have a second feeding will likely help these calves and make sure that they can get all the immunoglobulins they need. And quality, like I said, if you don't know the quality, you don't know if the amount you are providing is going to be enough. So if you don't measure the quality, make sure doing this second feeding is already going to help a lot. But if you do, or if you want to start doing and evaluating the quality of your colostrum, you'd have something that could be a colostrometer, which is this the right figure that is just a tool that is based on density. So the more dense, the more concentrated the immunoglobulins, the more this tool will float. So the best quality, you are going to be seeing this scale being on the grid. And we shouldn't use the red colostrum. So we would be looking for colostrum in this range of 50 milligrams of IgG or a Brix of 22%. And of course, cleanings of the colostrum is key. So like I said, for you to make sure all the calves have a good colostrum management, you'd likely have to evaluate that. And I don't know if you work with someone to do that. If you are in Southwest New York and you want to help doing that, please contact me and I can help you set up this. But I just wanted to touch base on this very quickly. And I put a QR code here because this will direct you to an article I wrote about colostrum management, and you can find more guidance on how to evaluate, what tools to use if you're interested in learning more about that. But I just wanted to touch base on this because I had an experience when I was in California, and I was doing I was helping a friend doing an experiment on a calf ranch, and these calf ranches were already buying calves direct from producers, and they had this agreement that they would, make sure the calves got good colostrum management, and that they would evaluate the specific transfer rate and send this data to the calf ranch. So what I'm trying to say with that is that as we see the industry integrating more and more, this exchange of information in health and how the animals are performing will likely help us take decisions, and will make it easier for us to understand what are the best ways to feed these calves, what we as a dairy industry can do to support the beef industry and give them the best calf we can give. So I believe that, as Karen and Betsy also said, their opportunities moving forward, I believe that Dr. Felix and other researchers are working tireless to understand how they can better feed these calves and take the best out of them. And I believe that contract programs and that we've established protocols will likely be a very good thing. You will incentivize dairy farmers to do the best they can with protocols and being compensated for that. And we will also help feeders to get the best healthy calves that they can get. And I think will also be a very good thing for like calf welfare, because the most we can reduce the transport of these animals very early in life, I'm sure the best for them this will be. And as we enhance this communication and traceability and health records, we can tailor management for these animals from the dairy to the beef, and just make sure that everyone is on the same page. And of course, as feeders, we start having the results of how they're feeding and what are they getting as far as carcass traits and other things, we can get their feedback and learn more on how we can improve the genetics and other aspects of this beef on dairies to tailor what we need as beef industry as well. So with that, I will open for questions or answer any questions you have.
Okay, we'll give you a little bit of time to go ahead and ask Camila any questions in the Q&A, or you can go ahead and raise your hand and I can click on you and you can speak. One of the comments that I want to make is that in talking to some folks who grade calves at sale barns, and Sam Vanstrom, who's on the call today, is one of those folks, and seeing calves for myself, those calves that are not off to a good start, those that are just loaded onto the truck and deposited at the sale barn, sell for barely anything, even if they have all the characteristics that are attractive, like black hides and good looking frames. Those animals that are robust, that are up, that are walking, that are alert, those animals are going to bring money. And so it's worth giving a little bit of extra care, especially if you have the space already, a little bit of extra care, a little bit of extra colostrum, good quality colostrum, to get those animals off to a good start, so that we can improve how our beef on dairy calves are seen as an industry in New York. I think there's a lot of potential, as all of the speakers have said, and this is a really big point to capture as much of that opportunity as we can.
Yes, for this strategy to be viable, it has to be good for everyone. So if we keep giving them very good calves, quality calves, and they're happy about it, it's also gonna rub on us and increase this price, and we are gonna make what we deserve on these calves. So
Right.
that's what I believe it's gonna happen going forward. So
All right, so we have a couple of questions in there. So congratulations on the lecture, Professor Camila. I am Brazilian, and I can say that you are a great example. Thank you so much. So
thank you so much.
thank you so much for that. Here's the second question. Do you have data on the incidence of diseases on dairy replacement heifers and beef on dairy calves in their first 60 days of life?
So I am not aware of data on the beef on dairy, and Betsy can jump in if she has this answer. What I was reading about these beef on dairy animals were more related to, you know, their finishing. So I've saw some data on, like I said during the presentation, on liver abscess and respiratory illness. And people are already trying to figure out how to do that. Ideally, we would be having for heifers, and I think we sometimes see that in good farms, we would be having a good standard for like less than 25% of diarrhea in farms, and that would be, you know, the goal. But I'm sure sometimes we see more, and I feel like as I work with farms around here, they are pretty close to the benchmark, which I think it's a good thing because we know how to take care of the heifers. And I feel like if we set up the colostrum management in the beef on dairy as well, we can also help them. Although they do have more challenges, right? Because they are transported, they are mixed with other animals. So I would guess that their incidence of disease would be higher since they have all this challenge in a way.
All right, thanks for that question. Any other questions?
I think Betsy wanna add
Oh,
something.
yep. Go ahead,
I
Betsy.
saw your video.
Yeah. So other than the benchmark data that you mentioned in replacement heifers, we haven't been able to study this population of beef on dairy animals in New York. And it's something we really want to do. We know more and more of them are being raised here. We just don't have good data on how they're being raised and our disease incidence. So if you're out there, talk to our funding partners to say, fund the grants that we're writing, because we want to know.
Yeah. So we have a comment here. It's a question and kind of a comment, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit tomorrow. But this person asks, how can I afford to tell the farmer to vaccinate and offer better colostrum to these calves? Do we, have a return on investment number for that? And I've seen a return on investment number. I just don't have it in front of me. Does anybody, Camila, Betsy? I don't know.
I don't have this number, and I feel like we said it again, the best quality animals we have as an industry, it's gonna drive the price fairly to calves, because I feel like we, at this point, if you don't get quality colostrum, if you're not treating your calves properly, let's say, you may be discounted on the calf barn. But I also think that sometimes dairy farmers can be also more like proactive in doing this type of management and couple it with trying to marketing this as a differential for their calves. So they can say, I do my colostrum management like that, and try to make this network, as Betsy was saying, and try to get a deal on trying to sell their calves to one person, or even on the sale barn. I think like if the person goes and, try to talk on how their calves are treated, I'm sure they would have like a better market. But I don't know if I'm being like a dreamer about that, but that's like my vision on this, is that sometimes you have to be proactive in selling how you are doing it and be a price maker, So I don't know if I'm being a dreamer. Karen can talk more about it.
No, I was going to say that you are spot on as far as program calves go. I think that their price at times can be lower than what the auction barn is giving you for a calf, but over the long haul, like if you can get a 6-month contract for your calves, that does make it a higher price that you're going to receive for those calves. But you can only be on these programs if you have a good calf care protocol in place, if they get the high quality colostrum, if their navels are dipped, if you're doing all the things. So I do think it depends on the program what your prices are going to be, but and right now it's kind of hard to tell because all calves right now are just sky high. But I think in the summer the calf prices will get back down to a normal level, and that's when you're going to see the program calves really shine.
All right, we have another question. How do you see animal welfare evolving in beef on dairy?
I was talking about the ADSA, the USDA presentation, and this presentation was, I forgot her name. She was talking about this on the Tri-State Conference, and she was talking about the evaluation of these beef on dairy animals, or just the male animals in veal industry, but also on the beef on dairy. And they were talking about this transport and what are the conditions that these animals are arriving in their, new house, and dehydration and all of that. And I feel like there is a bigger pressure on how we treat these animals, how long they can stay transport without water, how are we transport them, are they fitted for transport? And I've seen more and more people talking about it, which means these questions are coming from somewhere. And I believe consumers are aware of this, and I feel that this beef on dairy is a very good way for us to address a lot of concerns from the public, the welfare, environmental. We can actually sell it as it is. It's a very good thing. We are using animals that would be, wouldn't be a good fit for the dairy and wouldn't be a very good for the beef. And now we are having this new type of animal. And as Betsy and Karen also said, this evolving embryo technology and all of these. And just by combining these, we are doing a very good job on addressing welfare and environmental issues. And I think it's going to be better and better. That's how I believe. But I don't know if I was clear, but yeah.
Okay, great questions. Thanks, everybody. So Caitlin had made a comment here, a little in jest, but also in seriousness. A way to think about paying for calf protocols is, what's the value of a calf that dies? If you have a calf that you are sending to an auction barn and it dies, there might be something like a disposal fee on that calf. There might be, the trucker might charge an additional fee on that calf for hauling it. And of course you lose the value of that calf overall. So, I mean, what's another week of protocols and some colostrum and vaccines versus losing that? That's just something to think about. All right, so it looks like questions are slowing down a little bit here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, in the chat box, I am popping a link to a survey. And this survey helps us understand what you liked from tonight's set of speakers, what you didn't like, what we can do to improve, a couple things that you've learned. It'll take you about 1 to 2 minutes to complete. It would really help us if you do that. Once we go ahead and close out of the Zoom meeting, you'll also see that pop up on your screen automatically. So tomorrow, we're going to start same place, same time, same link. We're going to talk a little bit about the financial side of beef on dairy. We're going to talk a little bit about marketing beef on dairy, and we're going to talk a little bit about USDA grades and how taking these animals out to finish impacts pricing on those. I have something coming here. Sam, would you mind to unmute and share that with everybody? Because I think that's some really interesting information. Thanks. If you can unmute, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead, ask to unmute. Oh, so it's audio on her phone. 1 second. So Sam Vanstrom is our one of our Western New York market graders, and oh, she's unmuted. You got it. So she's gonna share a little bit of information from that perspective. I think you're unmuted, Sam. And if it's not working, I can just share what you typed in the box. So I'll go ahead and share that. So she says that some sale barns charge to dispose of DOA calves. There is a barn that she listed here that charges $30 for a calf that dies. So obviously they've had enough dead calves, they charge a fee. And it depends on what your trucker charges to haul them, but most are around $10 to $15 per calf. I'm not entirely sure if that's for dead calves or live calves. I think that's any calf. So that's value that you'd also lose. And she also states that current black calf prices are up to $3.50 a pound. Holsteins are up to $1.60 a pound, that's really incredible. Solid black coats are definitely still given a premium. Green calves, so those calves who are right off the mom, they basically haven't had much going on with them. They can't get up and walk, that sort of thing. Green calves and sickly black calves are discounted to about 30 cents a pound, where Holsteins are discounted between 5 and 20 cents a pound. So, I mean, $3.50 to 30 cents, that's a pretty incredible difference, just for that extra little bit of effort.
So before we go, I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge our sponsors for this series and thank them for making this event free. So Select Sires, Purina, Natural Biologics, ABS, and Oceana. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. So thanks, everyone. Really excited to see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.